You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, nice to be back with you all again this week. Today we're on to episode number 451 of the podcast, and I'm your host, Steve Mighty Blue Adams. Actually, before we start, I want to thank all of you who wrote to me regarding my request for ideas on how I might change the podcast going forward. I've read all the emails and I've replied to most of them, but I will get to them all shortly. They have certainly informed my thoughts, and I think a structure is kind of forming that will achieve what I want to do, and just as importantly, what the majority of you want me to do. I'm going to leave it open for another week, so in case some of you still want to reach out to me, you can at steve@hikingradionetwork.com. So let's get to this week's show. Our main guest today is Kim Shoop, a seemingly unlikely hiker, yet one who has achieved a remarkable feat in the past 8 years. I think you're really going to enjoy Kim's birth, I guess you could call it, as a hiker. She's very inspirational, and I'm sure she'll get one or two of you thinking, if she can do it, then I can. We'll hear from Kim in a moment. Then, with our class of 24 whittling down, we have another finisher today, Professor Milkshake, who called me yesterday morning from the Tablelands on his way down from Katahdin. After the professor, Lemonade shares her joy at pushing through Virginia and into Tennessee. We spoke with her this morning from Uncle Johnny's. Then, in one of those serendipitous moments we get from time to time, the second part of the latest chapter from Emily Leonard's book, Happy Hiking, sees Emily and Erwin, also at Uncle Johnny's. You can't make this stuff up, I tell you. So let's get going and meet Kim Shoop, or Gator. Our guest today is Kim Shoop, or Gator. Hey, Kim, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hello.
Now, you wrote to me a little while back and you described yourself as you used to be, as shy, anxious, and scared to make any changes to my life. It's a really kind of harsh self-assessment. What was it in your life that was making you feel that? Why did you say that?
Um, there were lots of different things. So I just felt constant anxiety, and like I'd been in the same job for years, and I wasn't happy to be in the job, but I also couldn't get myself to leave. And just there were so many things in life that sounded amazing, but I was too scared to ever do anything about it. It was just like, oh, it's so amazing that other people can do those things. How awesome for them.
So you're more of an observer.
Yeah, like hear things that sound like, wow, see people doing like triathlons and stuff, like that sounds amazing. I love to swim, run, bike, but I wasn't raised in that life. I didn't start
Sure.
Doing those things when I was 2 years old, so I guess that's just not for me, right?
And when you felt that way about yourself, had you discovered hiking by that time?
I knew I liked hiking in general, just like short distances at least.
Right.
I did not like camping though. I did not grow up like camping, but
Right.
I grew up in Las Vegas and it's very hot out there, so it would be 90 degrees by 7 a.m. up in the mountains. So we just didn't like camping.
And do you actually like camping now, by the way? Because you've done a heck of a lot of it.
I do. I like it a lot more. I can pick which seasons and where I want to go, and I have a lot more comfy of a sleep system than I did as a kid.
That always helps. Yeah. And the email you sent me, having knocked yourself down, it went on to say, I remember taking my first steps on the Appalachian Trail and being amazed at the beauty. Then a thru hiker came over the horizon and talked to me. And it sometimes takes just that little thing, doesn't it? How did it hit you so strongly that this was something that you kind of wanted to do and make these changes in your life?
Well, by then I had my first longer distance trail, and so it had started getting exposed to backpacking.
Right.
But I came up on the Appalachian Trail, and there were like all these red berries that were covered in wind-blown ice, and it was just gorgeous. And I just want to keep walking and see what's around the next corner, what's around the next corner. And then a hiker came over, was like, "Are you doing the whole thing?" Like, wow, this really is amazing, and this is definitely something I actually wish I could do. Like, I wish I could see the whole thing, but I mean, at the time, it kind of still felt like, well, if I can't do it all in one go, then what's the point, right? And
Well,
eventually had to learn to change my tune.
well, you certainly changed the tune a lot
Yeah.
because you kind of decided that you weren't happy with your life as it was. So you really kicked it up a gear. Tell us about your decision to go to the National Outdoor Leadership School. And by the way, for listeners, this wasn't in America. So tell us what made you make such a quite a dramatic choice to do that, didn't you?
Well, it is a school that's based out of the US, but they do have locations around the world. And an ad had shown up on my Facebook for them, and was like, well, I'm not going to click on an ad. I don't know what that'll do. But I decided to Google them and was like, wow, they have a lot of programs that can, they'll have teachers with you. So you're not just going to go out and kill yourself. They can help guide you through what equipment you need, and it's within my price range. So I just really wished that I could go. It's like, that sounds awesome, and just kind of left it at that for a while. And finally, it was just getting so fed up with myself that I just started talking to my now ex and was like, doesn't this sound amazing? Doesn't that sound awesome? It's like, well, yeah, but if you want to do this so much and you feel like that's going to help you, then why don't you just go for it? I'm like, what?
Did you feel
You're,
you needed that permission structure then?
yeah,
You did. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at least, an agreement there. It was like, if you're going to do something that big without your spouse, you at least need,
You need to have their buy-in.
agreement.
You
Yeah.
definitely need to have their buy-in, yeah. And it's called the National Outdoor Leadership School. So you went from this feeling the need to get the buy-in to going to do something that was specifically about leadership. Um, Tell us what it was like out there. Tell us what happened. And for a start, did you actually have a passport already?
I think I had an expired one.
Okay,
So, like, I had gotten one when I was like 14
right, right.
and hadn't been out of the country since then, and definitely never on my own. So it was petrifying getting on the plane, I think for the first time by myself at least, and going to another country, and met a bunch of other people that I'd never met before. There was no family with me. I was like, I don't know if I can do this without my family. And, and now I'm suddenly sleeping outside in this country that, oh, I guess we should mention, I went to Australia. So went to
Yeah,
Australia and
it wasn't just next door, was it? It wasn't
yeah,
Canada
no,
or anything like that. It was
no,
Australia. So
we're out,
you said
out in the outback,
you said you were terrified getting on a plane. You'd obviously
at least by myself.
right. Oh, because it was by yourself.
Yeah.
But did you find it quite freeing though? Pretty quickly.
Um, I guess so. I mean, I was definitely at least relieved that they spoke English. I mean, the accent was definitely not the same in some places. Had to get used to that, but it, went out there, and at least everyone else, all the other students were mostly in the same boat as me. We're all scared to be out
Did
there.
that? Well, that was interesting. So quite a few of them were quite nervous themselves, were they?
At least the first few nights, going to
Oh.
another country where everyone's like, "Watch out for all the wildlife. It's so dangerous." And now we're gonna go camp out there, and we know there's crocodiles
Isn't it
and
about 8 out of the 10? Of the 10 world's most poisonous spiders are out there, and about 6 out of the 10 world's most dangerous snakes are out there as well. So you're going to be
probably.
out in the wild. So tell us, what was that like then? Where did you go? I know you went somewhere north of Perth. What was it? What was it like?
We were a few hours outside of Broome, so we were in like the northwestern corner
Of
of
West Australia.
Australia.
Yeah.
Well, yep. So we're in Western Australia, outside of, or in the Kimberleys and the King Leopold Range,
All right.
and I mean, it was probably more bush-like. So some places it was very vegetated, some places it wasn't.
All right.
A lot of like tall cane grass, hiding rocks and stuff like that. But we learned so many different skills, like what should we be packing, how to cook without recipes, first aid skills. We had a chance to, well, at least one night we were each given one location to stay at with no one else around, so we had a chance to
Oh,
be by
really?
ourselves for 24
Really?
hours, and
Really?
that petrified me. But by the end, like, wow, I made it, I did it.
But did you enjoy it?
Um, a little bit. Was a little bored because we weren't allowed to move locations. I would have
Right.
preferred to like move around or pick the location that I could stay at, but it was, fascinating. It was like, wow, I thought I was going to be really emotional at the end, be like, oh my gosh, I've had this time to be with this person that I don't like for so long. By the end, I was like, no, I actually did it and I'm happy. Whereas other people who thought they were going to be just fine were pretty emotional afterwards. I'm like,
Mm.
wow, I did this. Was kind of proud of myself, I guess.
You should be. I tell you, I don't think I'd like to be out in Western Australian wilderness by myself, and I'm bloody 72. So, so tell us about cooking without recipes.
um, so I mean, we mostly had a lot of ingredients, so we could do stuff like we would make up a bread dough in the morning and then put in our packs and let it rise throughout the day. And then at night we'd turn it into like a pizza dough and make pizza, or we'd make like our version of some sort of flat bread and curry,
Oh,
stuff like
nice.
that. So my favorite was also like a peanut butter fudge. We take like a brownie mix and turn it into fudge, and we loved that.
So those skills you learned out there, did you apply many of them for when you started doing your longer trails? I mean, can you, when you go out there now, do you just take the pre-prepared meals, or do you actually take some pizza and make a pizza out there and some peanut butter fudge?
I have sometimes. I've turned more into like every time I go out, I try out something new, try out a new system. So recently I've been doing more cold soaking,
Right.
at least when it's hot out. But I do a lot of like I'll buy ingredients at home and then assemble my recipes at home. So when I go out on
Ah,
the trail, then I can have food that I like that's more normal to my stomach, so I don't get upset stomachs and stuff like that.
you should do a recipe book. I tell you, because I mean, I just go out with all the pre-prepared meals. The stuff you just add water to, really,
Yeah.
dehydrated stuff. So you clearly grew in confidence out there. Did that did that show itself as soon as you got back, or how did you use that confidence going forward?
Well, it was definitely a gradual process. Like coming back was like, okay, I think I'm ready to start, maybe planning small backpacking trips. Like let's start going overnight with other people,
Right.
and it slowly got bigger and it's like, let's do other things like do a triathlon. Be like, I've wanted to go back to school to get a graduate degree. I'm going to apply for grad schools. Why not? So I ended up moving to Eastern Tennessee, which is where I was introduced to the AT officially. I mean, I had
Right.
heard of it, but it wasn't until I walked on, it was like, whoo, yes,
So
I do want this.
I'm not going to dwell on this, but you came back and your ex-husband now saw somebody different to the person who left, I presume. And that confidence must, made you realize there were things you could do that you never thought you could do before. So that in itself is a major plus. And then you then decided to set yourself what I think I've referred to in my notes as a stupendous task. Tell us what you decided to do.
Well, first uh, so before I got there, I went ahead and decided it was like I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hike the AT. I'm going to do it in sections. I guess if I can't do a full through hike, then I can start doing it in sections, and kind of set it as a New Year's resolution sort of thing. And so I started day hiking in like January, like January 17th of
Huh?
2017, and
Wow.
but only did a few hikes, and in the meantime was hoping that I could find other people to go with me on a longer hike. And just no one wanted to do any more than 3 to 5 miles, so it just kept being put on hold. And
That's not going to get it done, is it?
I was like, maybe every other week or so. I was like, wow, this is not going to happen. And then I hit a personal circumstances happened, and
Sure.
I got really, really down. And finally, I was like, you know what? I no longer just want this. I need this. I really need this. It gives me clarity and direction when I'm on the trail. So I'm going to stop putting these limits on myself. And not only am I going to do the whole AT, I'm going to do the whole Triple Crown, and I'm going to give myself 10 years to do it.
To do it in
And
sections. Oh my
I,
God, that is just
like,
amazing.
and I didn't really tell anyone. I mean, I told a couple people that I was going out on the AT, but that was it. I was just like, nope, this, but I was determined, like, this is what I'm going to do. And once I was out on the AT, people like, have you considered doing the other ones? Like, yep, I'm going to do the whole Triple Crown. Like, already? You already know? Like 3 days in? Like, yep, I am.
Wow. So what was a through hike not possible with your life circumstances at the time?
Especially at the time I was in grad school, so I only had,
Of
a
course, yeah.
few months off. Wasn't super fast at hiking yet, and it just wasn't convivial at the time. And also partially mentally, it was like, oh, I can't, leave my cats and other stuff like that
Yeah, we're going to talk
for
about
that
your
long.
cats in a minute, which is bloody hilarious, by the way. You mentioned the word, it gave you clarity out there. What does that mean to you?
I mean, some of it is it's a very literal sense, like what every day you wake up and you know literally what direction you're walking and you know exactly where you're going to. So it like gives yourself little goals to work towards, and each day you can literally see yourself making progress, and it gives that like happy
Hmm.
satisfaction. And so you can also focus on other things too. So when stuff starts to boggle you down, you have lots of time to think about it. And if it's hard, then you just stop, take a break, process it. If something's bogging you down, give yourself to let it go, and then keep walking and walk off any
It gives you some
frustrations you
sort of
have.
structure, doesn't it? And once
Yeah.
you can work around, once you have a structure, you know what you're doing with it, and you get better and better at it as well. You do. I found myself walking endlessly and talking, talking to myself and singing and
Yeah.
laughing out loud and stuff like that. Because I've got that structure around me. I knew where I was going to go for that day, what I needed to eat, and I was pretty much good to go. Now, the other thing that struck me when you said you wanted to do the Triple Crown in 10 years, in fact, by the way, spoiler alert, she did it in 8 years, which is bizarre, was the fact that it must be much more logistically challenging to do that because you've got to restart every single darn time, haven't you? Or did you stay in shape, basically, during that, in your off hiking days?
I try to stay in shape as much as possible in the off hiking days, and it's spoiler alert, it's by hiking. So I'm
Mhm.
usually hiking I mean, I try to go out like once a week and section hike other trails in the meantime. So I've finished a few other trails while trying to
Bisection hikes.
by section hikes. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of a speciality if you're in it, really. So anyway, for trip number one, you chose the AT. And the first thing you're going to tell us about, and you've given a clue already about this, tell us about the cat carriers.
So, as he said, I was hesitant to leave my cat. So I was like, you know what? I have this external frame backpack. I hooked up two plastic cat carriers, put the cats in it, attached my backpack to it, and attempted to put it on, and it was so heavy, like I could barely walk across the room. I mean, the pack went from like my knees to the top of my head, and like, okay, cats have to stay. Like I don't even have all the gear for them yet, so they gotta stay. So I had to take the cat carriers off. I mean, it must have weighed at least 70 pounds.
I can't imagine that would have been terribly comfortable for the cat either, really. Couldn't you just have
Yeah.
them sort of sitting on your shoulder or something like that, or sit on the back of your back without a carrier?
Oh, they wouldn't have done that.
I wouldn't know. Okay. Well, I'm glad you didn't do that. I'm told, I've seen somewhere there is a guy who hiked, I'm not sure it's all of the AT, but quite a bit of the AT with cats. So you never know. Could be
Yeah,
a thing
they
for you to do
weren't
in the future.
trained for that, so
Right. Yeah. Who
a
is?
little bit.
Nor were you, by the way. Neither of us were either. So what was the plan that year, the first AT year? What were you intending to do that first year?
So my first year, I planned to do like a 3-week trip, maybe later on do another 2-week trip, and then just do day hikes like every other week, and hopefully that would somehow accomplish half of the AT.
Right.
I didn't do the math at all. And quickly realized, oh, there's a whole lot of trail. Like this is a lot longer
Oh,
than
yes.
than my mind likes to think it is. But I did go out for my first 3-week trip. So I walked from Amicalola Falls to Sam's Gap.
Right, right. And that's how much? How far?
It's like 320 or so, something
Right.
like that.
So, once you've been out for that long, 300 miles is a heck of a long way, as I'm sure you know now.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
you knew what it was like. You learned how to do things. But in fact, you started pretty badly, didn't you? You were pretty unprepared. The first couple of days, you had a few issues, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I had some backpacking skills, but it was skills honed for, well, Australia and out west,
All
where in the
right.
desert. So I wasn't ready for the rain, and I wasn't ready for the wildlife. Like I got a bear rope, and I looked up how to do a bear hang. Hadn't tried it out beforehand. Like, well, I've got a picture and instructions, and like the first night, I could not get the bear rope over the tree for the life of me, so I finally just gave
It's
up and put
exhausting,
my
though, isn't it?
foot. Yeah,
It's exhausting.
I gave up and just put my foot in the tree, and then checked it like every 20 minutes all night. The next morning, I woke up, I was like, "Oh, look, there's a bear box within view of my campsite." Like, I didn't know that. And then the next day, I finally got the rope over the tree. So excited, and as soon as I started to pull the food up, the whole tree came down. So yeah, it wasn't very good. So,
So you also had, as I understand, a Walmart tent, which is not
yes.
recommended, is it?
No, especially not the one I had. It was one of those where the rain fly only comes like halfway down the tent.
All right.
So so I knew the rain fly didn't work. So instead of bringing rain fly, I just brought one of those big, heavy tarps from Walmart and just kind of threw it on top. And so I mean, it flooded 18 out, no, it rained 18 out of 22 nights. So my tent was flooding every night. And then
Oh,
I
God.
discovered the shelters and loved the shelters. And I mean, I packed the tent out, but then I gave up using a tent for like 3 years.
And you didn't
So,
have rain gear, did you?
uh, no, I forgot. I forgot my rain gear, but at least as soon as I got to Neil's Gap, I got a rain poncho just in time for before the rain started.
I need to tell
So,
everybody, by the way, that you are, Kimberly, a very accomplished hiker. It doesn't sound like those first few days, and yet you still got there. You got there. You did your
yeah.
330 miles. What kept you going? Because it it was such a shaky start that would tend to undermine the confidence of a lot of people. And your person is almost self-confessed. You were lacking in confidence at the time. What was it that was keeping you going? Were you trying to just prove something to somebody?
Um, I know I was definitely excited to be out there still. I was still enjoying it, especially once you know, discovered the shelters. Like, oh, hey, I can stay dry at night.
There you go.
And once I realized, oh, you need to eat more food than what I was eating,
Um,
I was not. I was looking at everyone else, going, "Wow, you sure eat a lot. Look at me. I'm only eating 1,000 calories, and I'm just fine." And after a few days, like, I'm not fine anymore. But I
yeah,
started eating more and really enjoyed it, and started enjoying being around the other hikers. I mean, there were just a few other section hikers out at the same time, and
sure.
every we didn't necessarily hike together, but we'd meet up at the shelters every night. And I don't know. I loved the experience. I loved being out there, and it was the feeling like you're thriving at something.
So did you make, you said you wanted to do this in section hikes. Did you did the 330 miles that year. You took another 3 years to finish it, which is still pretty impressive. What were those next three sections like? Were they longer? Or, they had to be longer, in fact, didn't they, by definition?
So I did go back out the second time that summer, which ended short because I had a mild injury. And
What was that? What happened?
well, like I got a blister that went really deep, and then I pulled a muscle, and so it was like, okay, the blister, I had to go faster so I couldn't feel it, and then if I went faster, then the pulled muscle was going back forth.
Yeah,
And
winning combination.
yeah, so like I got to a point, it's like, oh, I'm not going to make it to the shelter, and I didn't bring a shelter, and I forgot to bring a first aid kit. Like, this is just a disaster. I'm going. I guess I'll just go home. It was like a week is good. The second year I didn't have very much time, so did like 2 weeks trip through Shenandoah to Harper's Ferry.
So you were halfway through after 2 trips, effectively.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, lots of still like weekend trips and day hikes and stuff. Third year, after a couple shorter trips, went out and did a 600-mile section from Duncannon to
Vermont?
What's it called?
Vermont area?
New Hampshire, the New Hampshire border. What is?
Oh, right. So then the last year you did it for New Hampshire and Maine. That was a bit different. But you clearly thrived in that environment because you were going out and doing it again. What was it doing for your psyche? Was it the community? Was it discovering the strength in yourself that you'd always doubted? Or were you just really feeling that clarity?
Part of it's the community. I think a lot of it is the strength I feel from it. Like whenever I make the miles, I really like being able to be like, "Yep, look how many miles I've done." It just gives me this slight thrill, I guess. I mean, I'm not like the biggest mileage person ever, but I don't know. It helps me feel good about myself, I guess.
What can you do? I mean, what's your longest mileage day you've done?
I was like, well, I've done longer in a trail race.
Right.
So I've done a 100-mile trail race. But then
in what period of time?
just under 34 hours.
It's only a week.
No, on the PCT, I did a 63-mile 24-hour challenge.
Oh my gosh. So given your own low opinion of yourself previously, did your family believe that you could do that? And did they trust you to go out and do it? Or, I mean, I know you don't have to tell anybody you're an adult, you can do what you damn well like. But, there's something about your family buying into what you're doing that's quite helpful, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when I started the AT, I didn't tell my family. And they kind of found out and panicked a little, like, "Wait, what are you doing? Where are you?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm getting off. It's okay. It's only a few weeks." I mean, they knew I did the AT, and I know at least by the time I started the PCT, my mom wasn't very happy, but my siblings were just like, "Oh, okay. It sounds boring, but okay." Like, what? No, it's not boring. I guess sometimes get bored, but
so you
I love
haven't
it for the most part.
so you haven't converted any of the family to do what you're doing.
To do it, no, but at least now I finally, my family understands better and
They see
are
it.
much more supportive now.
Now, I always ask, nearly always ask the people who through hike the AT about their Katahdin day. But the section you did there, New Hampshire and Maine, from a standing start, effectively, that is a tough thing to do. How was your Katahdin day? Did that feel a particular accomplishment for you?
It was. I mean, it took 3.5 years to get up there. I was very, excited and emotional, and I guess I hadn't. Sorry, I guess I'm hesitant to answer this one.
Okay. Oh.
Sorry.
I can cut it out if you like.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I guess.
Say what you want to say, and then we'll see if we can keep it in or not.
Okay. It was very bittersweet because I was very proud of what I did.
Yeah.
But I also felt like I didn't know anyone that cared. I mean, I had a couple friends that would be happy for me, but I didn't think my family would even say anything about it. So I went down and celebrated with the what are the names?
With your
the hostel.
What in Millinocket?
No, the other one.
Shaw's in Monson.
The Shaws, yeah. So I went and celebrated with the Shaw family.
All right,
instead.
Nice.
And my mom did congratulate me afterwards, which I was surprised about.
But you know what?
Yeah,
it is definitely. You've got to do it for you, haven't you? You haven't got to do it for anybody else. And frankly, if they don't get it, they don't get it, and that's fine. That should be fine. I I feel your pain though. I can understand what you're saying. I've always had support, so it's just quite nice to have that support. But you were still getting what you were getting out of it, and that's valuable in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then you went for the PCT, and you must have pretty much had your gear dialed in by now. Did you make any changes from the AT to the PCT?
Yeah, well, there's definitely certain gear that you're going to need on the PCT compared to AT. So definitely things I added, and
Like what? What'd you take? Ice
um,
axe?
ice axe,
Yeah.
the micro spikes. You need a bear can for
Of
for the
course. Yeah.
Sierras.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it was probably pretty
But your
similar
shelter
by
was the
then.
same. It wasn't a Walmart tent anymore, I presume. Oh no,
No, it
actually
was
no. Have you told me you stayed in shelters when you were on the AT? So what did you do in terms of a tent?
shelters. I did well, at least for that third year, I brought one of those emergency aluminum bivvies,
Right.
and that was it.
Wow.
And then I did have a friend who was like, "You have to get a tent." Like I met a friend on the trail, and he let me stay in his tent a couple nights, but most of the time I just stayed in the shelters. And then by my fourth year on the AT, I did find a system for me that I could afford, and
So I
yeah.
must have misled you there. What I was saying is, what did you must have taken a tent to go on the PCT.
Oh, yes.
Right.
So
Okay,
the
you did.
tent I got my fourth year on the AT, I took out on the PCT with me.
And you did this in just 2 long hikes, didn't you? Which is over 1,000 miles each time. Why speed up?
Well, on the PCT, I wanted my chance to actually do a through hike, and so I attempted to hike the whole thing in 100 days,
Right. Wow.
and which didn't quite happen. I mean, I got to the Sierras, and then I had an emergency at home. I had to get off for 3 weeks for. So by the time I got back, like, yeah, I can't finish it.
Don't tell me one of your cats was sick.
Yeah, he was in the hospital dying,
Oh my gosh! So
and
that must have really thrown you a bit. Crikey!
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and he ended up sick for like a few weeks, and finally my sister like, I can't take care of him anymore. You have to come home. And then once I got home, he finally recovered, and so I got to go back out. But I
he was
teach. I
hey,
only yeah.
he was in the hospital dying, but he recovered. You went back out. He was just play acting. Cats do that all the time.
Yeah, but I only have 100 days off during the summer to hike, so like, well, I can't finish this summer, so I finished what I could, and then went back out the next
Right.
summer and finished the last
And
bit.
that you just mentioned teaching. That's how you live and pay your bills, isn't it? Basically.
Yes.
And what do you do?
Um,
What do you teach?
I teach geology and GIS, and so at our local university, and then I just have to live thriftily throughout the year so I can save up to live thriftily on the trail.
It's some people want different things out of life, don't they? This is a stage in your life where you're geared towards hiking, aren't you? I'm sure you love your teaching, but at the end of the day, it's a means to an end, so you can get out hiking again, isn't it? And
Yes,
then,
it is.
and then this year you finished the CDT also in 2 lashes, and so you were 2 years ahead of your 10-year schedule. Which has been your favourite of the 3 hikes? Well, by 3 hikes, I mean the 3 trails so far.
It's so tricky. Like, I think for beauty, probably the CDT,
Hmm.
but I have learned to really love the social side of things. So it really just depended on when I had a trail family. So I had trail families on parts of the AT and trail families on parts of the CDT,
Hmm.
and and I guess a little bit on the PCT. But when I had those other people to hike with, that's when I ended up enjoying the trails the most.
I'm sure, and in fact, but the speeds you go at, you go quite damn fast, don't you? So if you go quite fast, or you do a lot of not necessarily
At
fast, but
least
you do a
a
lot
lot
of
of miles
miles.
per day.
Yeah, you do a
Yes.
lot of miles. It must be tough for people in some ways to do the same sort of miles as you. So this shy person who, by your own admission, was unhappy with her life, has transformed herself through hiking. And frankly, people can't see you right now, but you've been smiling pretty much the whole time. So you're a smiling person. Couple of questions about that, about how you transform yourself. First of all, who actually are you these days?
That's still such a hard question. I'm definitely a hiker.
Good.
I
Good.
love hiking. I I'm a hiker, I'm a geologist, I'm a runner, and I'm a cat person. What I am? I love
And
my
you don't
cats.
get
I
your
don't
own way
care.
anymore, do you?
I don't get in my own way, not as much.
Oh, you still do a bit. There you
It's still a process, there's
go.
in some ways, but in other ways, especially when it comes to, like, physical limitations like that, I think my mind is definitely much more open than it used to be. It's
I'm
like,
sure.
okay, if I think I can't, like, well, why? Are there actual limitations, or is it just me thinking that I can't?
And have you thought about, because you could have done anything else. You could have done triathlon, as you say, triathlon, say, because you like the idea of that. Have you thought about why hiking has done this to you? What is it? You say it gives you the clarity, but it must be doing something specifically to you that's made a massive difference in your life.
Well, I do believe that part of it, there's, nature is very healing, and being out in it is very healing. But there's also, at one point, I heard this saying, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And I chose, and so I picked something really big. It's like, well, I want to do one of these really long trails. If I couldn't fail, this is what I want to do. And I've done it. And it maybe that's, it's been so big and so meaningful that that's why hiking has resonated with me so much, because I have done some of the other things and they are special, just not quite to the extent of this huge journey that
Yeah.
I went out on and accomplished. So it's very accomplished
Now,
feeling.
I've had young women on the podcast before who express themselves similarly to the way you have. They weren't sure about their lives and so on, and whether they could do certain things, and then they went out and went hiking. So, with the journey you were just talking about, what advice would you offer other people who may very well feel the same way as you did, 10 years ago? And by the way, and there's a knowledge here, of course, that whatever worked for you may not work for somebody else.
Yeah.
But, if you've seen something in yourself happening, I'm sure you've connected with other women and perhaps, you've inspired them for doing this, taking on this big old goal, and you've completed it. So what would you say people should do?
Definitely go ahead and dream your goal, make a plan. And, even if you don't necessarily make it to the end of your goal, it's okay. It's still a step. It's still one more step up that mountain is still a step closer. So if you have to take a step back and
Yeah,
reassess, then there's still time. You can go out again. You don't have to do it as one huge through hike. You can do it, one day at a time. So if that's what inspires you, then go for it.
go for it. Go for it. Good idea. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think you're quite a woman, and I guess people meeting you. If I'd met you 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that necessarily, and you weren't that confident. But you've done so much, and your YouTube channel, I've been checking that out, checked a few of those videos. Where you come across as quite confident on the trail now. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. Take it easy, all right?
You too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. After all those achievements, Kim still sounds a little wary of her own success, doesn't she? I mean, there's no doubt that attending that outdoor leadership course in Australia propelled her to believe in herself, yet it's almost as if she's not entirely sure of how accomplished she really is. And when she said after summiting Katahdin, "I didn't know anyone who cared," that was such a poignant moment. You sometimes need a validation of some sort, don't you? And by the way, I did give her the opportunity to veto that answer from the recording, and I told her to think about it for a couple of days. I didn't hear, so I left it in. And that question she quoted near the end, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Kim picked a really long trail, and as she said, I've done it. That feeling of accomplishment is so strong, and I only hope it leads to other great adventures for her. Once I stopped recording, Kim mentions something that I thought you might like to hear, so I pressed the record button again. When we stopped recording, Kim and I were chatting a bit, and she talks about, she was talking about a guide she has for the Palmetto Trail. So tell me what you're talking about.
So the Palmetto Trail it's a long distance trail. It crosses South Carolina, but it's not complete. Like there is a website for the Palmetto Trail and the trail isn't complete. So I made a separate website for those who want to through hike the Palmetto Trail with information like here's the maps, here's different places to resupply
Nice.
and stuff like that. So that's just a website where you can go and look up how to hike the whole Palmetto Trail. And if you have questions about it, you can contact me through it.
So what does the official Palmetto Trail website think about that?
Oh,
By the way, the
I'm
answer
not
should
sure.
be,
I mean, it's
the
like I
answer should be, I don't
don't make money off
care.
it.
I don't
Yeah, like I
care.
don't care. Like I don't make money off of it. It's just I just wanted a free resource out there for to go in addition to their website. So
Very elegantly put, by the way, Kim. Well done. Okay, thanks for that. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well. All right?
all right, you're welcome.
Good. So you can check that out if you have any interest in hiking the Palmetto Trail. Nice of her to put that together. Now, from a windy Katahdin yesterday morning, I got hold of David Vose, or Professor Milkshake. Here he is.
Hello.
Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, Steve. Good. How are you?
Well, first off, tell us where you are.
I'm just down from the summit of Katahdin.
Of course you are. You're on the tablelands, apparently. So was it pretty blowy up the top there?
Very blowy. Very blowy. Yeah.
Well, first off, many congratulations. Let's come back to the summit in a second. But we haven't spoken for a couple of weeks. So how's the last couple of weeks gone, including the 100-mile wilderness and all in Maine, really?
It's been absolutely amazing. The 100-mile wilderness was the most extraordinary experience. The weather was absolutely perfect.
Great.
Not a drop of rain.
Marvelous.
We camped by lakes and got sunrises that were beautiful and views of Katahdin. And it's just been absolutely perfect.
Those views of Katahdin, when you're still, 50, 60 miles away, you can see it and it's kind of beckoning you, isn't it?
It is. And each day you get a little closer and a better view, and it's kind of really imposing. But we got our last view at A-Ball Bridge, and I looked up at it and I thought, that's not so bad.
well, we'll talk about that, how not so bad it was in a second. So how long did you take to get through the 100-mile wilderness?
We did it in 7 days. We hustled the first 4 days to make our food drop. And then the last 3 days, we just decided to take our time and enjoy it and take the views and really get the most out of it. So
it is wonderful. It is wonderful how people do that. They take their time because they know they're running out of time, and this is a special time for them to enjoy it, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And to be honest, when I got to the sign at the end of the 100-mile wilderness, I just broke down because I just didn't want it to end.
Wow.
And I still don't want it to end. I'm kind of over the hiking, but the community and the lifestyle, I just absolutely love it.
So this originally began as a bit of a school project, didn't it? to put it to reduce it to its lowest level. It's become obviously much more than that. Can you put into words what it's been like?
I mean, it's been the most extraordinary experience of my life, really.
Wow.
It's an adventure. It's a grand adventure. And it's a journey that most people will never get to take. And it's hard to put into words. You'll take it. Everyone who does this takes it with them for the rest of their life. They probably think about it every day and the experiences they had and the people they met. And
Well, so how lucky are we to have the opportunity to do this? So you got to the Golden Road and you walked along and saw the view of Katahdin from A-Ball Bridge, and you said it looks okay. So talk me through the day this morning. What's happened?
We got up at 6:30.
Right.
Perfect weather, and it took us 3.5 hours to get up.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah. It was great climb though. There's the part after you reach the tree line. That's an adventure. The boulder scramble going very steeply up.
But you think, what on earth am I doing here? Oh my gosh, this is a whole new level, isn't it? Really?
It is, yeah. We haven't seen anything like that, but that was great. And we're going down the A-ball trail, so I think we have more fun in front of us.
Oh right, I've no doubt you do. So you get to the hand over hand stuff, above tree line. That's kind of invigorating, isn't it? But you just said it was quite blowy as well. Was it quite dangerous up there?
I would say there were some parts going up that boulder scramble where, we had to stick pretty close to the rocks.
Sure.
And my beard catches the wind and sets me off balance a little bit. So.
Oh, funny. So you get up there and you get to the tablelands. Could you see the sign quite early, or was it still some way off? Did it feel some way off?
No, we could see it quite clearly, yeah. Big group of people up there today.
Right.
I think the folks down at Katahdin Stream, the ranger station, figured about 25 through hikers, but there are lots of day hikers and other groups up there. So, we got up there and we did our pictures, and had lunch, and it's been wonderful.
Give me those last 20 steps. What was going through your mind at the time?
I mean, it's hard to say. I was expecting a real range of emotions, and I just kind of felt a real sense of satisfaction and achievement with what we've done. And I was with my buddies here, Trip and the American and Penobscot, and we all went up together. And it's just, there weren't any tears, but there was just a little bit of sadness that it's over. But, that's the way it is. That's the way it goes.
But David, remember, most importantly, it isn't quite over yet. You do have to get down, and getting down is not the easiest thing in the world, is it?
That's right. Someone just said going up is optional, going down is mandatory. So.
Indeed it is. Well, I'm not going to delay you any longer on this. I'm going to circle back with you at some stage. It's getting very blowy now, I can tell. I'm going to circle back with you at some stage in 2 or 3 months to see how you are and if you've reflected upon it a bit more. But many, many congratulations. It's been a privilege to follow you, and I'm so glad you did it. And thanks for coming on the show and sharing all your story with us.
Thanks so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, buddy. You take it easy and enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
Will do. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
I'm always aware not to interfere too much with people when they're celebrating their achievement, especially from Katahdin, which needs your full attention as you're climbing down after the summit. It's also worth pointing out that there was a lot of wind up there, so the edit doesn't reflect quite how windy it was, but it was great to hear David refer to it as the most extraordinary experience of his life. Because if you recall, he came to the trail as a kind of school project, but as you've often heard on here before, the trail kind of takes you over. I'm sure he'll be experiencing a range of other emotions in the coming weeks and months as the realisation of what he's achieved settles in. Now, heading in an entirely different direction, Sondra Lee has made it out of Virginia. Here she is.
Good morning.
Hello, Sondra. How are you?
I'm doing well.
It's
we can hear each other.
That's right. Yeah, it's a little bit early, I know. So I apologise for this. I lost our interview everybody yesterday, so we're doing it again. We enjoyed our conversation so much. We're doing it again. And the last time we spoke and you were on the show, you were in Marion, Virginia, but you're now in Erwin, Tennessee. So you've done Virginia. How was it like to leave Virginia?
Oh, it felt really good. It felt like an accomplishment. Virginia is such a large state, and that's 25% of the trail. So we spent probably close to 6 weeks in Virginia. That felt like a huge accomplishment once we reached that Tennessee border. Yeah,
there's something about it. I remember going into it, and you think you're making progress in those early. Going north anyway, certainly you're making progress, and then suddenly it feels like it comes to a stop, but it doesn't, and it's a great state to enjoy. And I know that you enjoyed going through Mount Rogers area and especially the Grayson Highlands. So how did you find the ponies?
Oh, that was I really did enjoy seeing the ponies. When we when we entered in the Mount Rogers area, you start seeing signs of the ponies here and there. And our first day in the area, just north of Grayson Highlands State Park, we saw some ponies in the distance, but we never saw any up close. And when we, set up our tent and we went in for the evening, we're reading, and it's quiet outside, and all of a sudden you could hear little crunch, crunch, crunch noises. And we peeked outside of our tent, and there were 3 ponies eating the grass around our tent.
Nice.
So it was really nice to have that close-up encounter with them. We got out of the tent. We didn't approach them, but we got out of the tent and watched them eat the grass, and they just kind of ignored us.
Well, funny enough, that you're lucky they ignored you, because I know that when I was there, certainly the second time, I don't remember the first time actually, but the second time they would come up to you and lick your arms, and they would because of the sweat, because of all the sweat, and even your backpack. So you're lucky they ignored you. They're incredibly human oriented, aren't they? They're quite totally comfortable around humans.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And there's another pony, looks like a young pony, just standing like 3 feet off the trail. And we walked past him, and he just completely ignored us and kept eating grass. So yeah, they are definitely used to having people around.
Didn't you find the trail a bit rocky though? That's something that I'd forgotten from first time to second time, and yet it kicked my ass again. I found it so damn rocky.
It was very rocky. It's like because it's at a high elevation, and we kind of noticed that these higher elevations we're seeing a lot more rocks, and so it was a little surprising when we got up there. We kind of expected open meadows, clear paths, but it was quite rocky. Now, some of the rocks were beautiful, neat boulder formations, but it was rocky, and it did kind of slow us down.
But you still got the meadows, didn't you? I mean, there's still some great views to be had there. Did you have decent weather to go through it?
We did. We had really good weather. You could see off in the distance, and that's where we could see the ponies like way off in the distance. Like, we know there's ponies out there. We could see them way over there. So we did. We had some really good weather. But yeah, like you said, you go from meadows to a little rocky area, and yeah, some of the rocky areas. I thought this is good training for New Hampshire.
yeah, it ain't. Trust me.
No, it's not. No. Nothing. There's nothing to do for that. Just go for it.
And there's certainly no ponies at the top of Mount Washington either.
No, there's not.
So how's the? Because as you may know, a couple of weeks ago, I just did the approach show, which I know is well south of where you are, but it's been incredibly hot, and there was no water up there. How's the water been for you then in the Grayson Highlands and beyond, really?
Well, what we've had to do some look ahead. So the night before, we always take a look at the comments and far out to see what the water sources are. And we've been able to find at least water about every 10 miles. And if we carry like 1.7 liters of water, it's in each of us.
Right.
So per person. So if I carry 1.7 liters of water, I could usually go 8 to 10 miles with the weather not being extremely hot. It hasn't been extremely hot lately, so we haven't had to do any long carries like we did further up north.
Good.
It seems like, and you also learn to find water from sources you may have ignored in the past.
Oh, yes, definitely.
The tiniest little trickle. It's all right. I'll just be here. You just kind of plan ahead, knowing that it's going to be a slow trickle, so it's going to be a longer break. Yeah, it does take some planning and looking ahead to make sure you're going to be able to make your mileage,
sure,
without having to carry water.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's the important thing. And have you found far out to be pretty up to date? And the reason I ask is that when we were doing the approach trail, there was no reference to water in the first 30 miles since July. I mean, there probably was water, but nobody put any point messages in there. So you're getting quite up to date information.
Yes, and when we first flipped, we were not. A lot of the comments were out of date because we flipped a little bit early, so we're kind of ahead of the Sobos, and we're ahead of a lot of the flip-floppers that are starting to flip.
Uh-huh.
So that was a little tricky in the beginning, but now there's at least a couple of people that I know that I met on the north half that have flipped and that are ahead of us.
Yeah.
So one thing is neat because I know them and I see their comments.
Right.
And so now that they're ahead of me, I've been able to use their comments. I also find if I do find a water source that's good and with no comments within the past week, I'm trying to add my comments too. So if it's a week out of date, I'm trying to add.
That's a good lesson as well for people to, if they've got, and everybody should have far out. I mean, other people will say you should take a compass all the time. Great, good for you. But as far as far out's concerned, it's that crowdsourcing of information that's important to share with others, because water's become a problem quite often on the trail. So it's important you make those comments. Now, you say you've been breaking down Virginia into small parts, and I think that's such a good idea. I mean, just doing 20 or 30 miles, thinking, okay, well, here's the next 20, 30 miles, or here's the next 50 miles, because it is a long state to go through. How's the mentality of your hike? Because I know you've always got trail horse to cheer you up, and you can cheer him up as well and keep each other going. Is it that sort of small parts thing that really helps you?
That really helped me with Virginia. Before going into Virginia, you always hear people talking about the Virginia blues and how long the state is. They feel like they're not making any milestones because it's a whole 550 miles.
Yeah.
But so knowing that going into it, I kind of broke it up. Like first, we're going southbound. So like first we hit the roller coaster. And then after the roller coaster, I had the Shenandoahs to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's a gap, there'll be, a gap between each of these features. And then I'm looking forward to the Triple Crown. And then on the other side of the Triple Crown, I knew I had Grayson Highland eventually coming up. So when I broke it up into little pieces, it's like I always had that feature that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
And that really was a nice mental break for me. I didn't think it as a 550 miles. It's like, oh, okay, in 200 miles, I got this cool thing coming up.
Yeah.
Or maybe 200, but usually they're separated by like 50 miles or so. So, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing to look forward to right at the end of Virginia, going south, is Damascus. Did you enjoy that?
I did. I'm so glad I got to we took a 0 day there to take her some tours.
Nice.
We found the people in Damascus to be so incredibly friendly. As we're walking down the sidewalk, everyone's saying hello to us as we walk past. And we had the opportunity to stay at Lady Di's bed and breakfast.
Nice.
And that was, oh my gosh, that was such a nice hostel. She has such a good setup. I really enjoyed staying with her. And
she's selling it. She's selling it, don't you?
Yeah, she is. I talked to her a little bit about that. I know she wants to, eventually return to where her daughters live.
Sure.
It is such a good setup, and I do hope that another hiker does pick it up. But what is interesting is the people of the community really admire her, and they're sad to see that she has the bed and breakfast for sale, because one of the restaurants we went to, the bartender said, "Oh, please tell Lady Di that I said hello to her."
Oh, that's nice.
It was really neat that she is a member of that community.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And with such a fantastic hostel, it'd be great to see someone pick it up and continue that torch.
Now, you also said in one of your notes to me that you couldn't find any shoes to fit you.
Yeah, that's the one thing about Damascus that didn't turn out as planned. Both of our shoes had over 500 trail miles coming into Damascus. And I knew there were at least 3 outfitters. And we went to 2 outfitters, and they didn't have anything that would work for either of us. And there was a 3rd outfitter who also runs a shuttle business. So every time we went by his place, he was closed. Oh. So we hiked out of Damascus wearing our old shoes. So,
are you still wearing your old shoes? You still wearing your old shoes now?
Yeah. So they had 500 miles coming to Damascus. I'm still wearing them. Oh. The tops of the shoes are okay. They don't have holes in them. The treads are looking a little thinner and starting to fall apart.
Well, you know what? You know what though? You really need to change them as soon as possible then, because you're just heading down. Not just, but you're heading down to Springer, and that's still about 480 from Damascus. So you've got to put some good miles on them. So you're going to need to change them soon. Can't you get some in Erwin right now?
Well, what I did was I went ahead just because I didn't want to take the chances of going to Erwin and then going to Hot Springs and not finding shoes. I went ahead and ordered some shoes, and I have them sent to Elmer's in Hot Springs. So I do have shoes waiting for me, which means I'll have 700 miles on these shoes at least.
Yeah.
When I come into Hot Springs. So I have had some foot pain recently. It's been slowly increasing. I'm hoping it's due to old shoes. So I'm wondering if these old shoes are making tired and sore feet. So I have some toes that are just a little bit sore, about 10 miles in each day. I'm a little nervous about the next. We're going to try to push 4 days into Hot Springs, so I'm a little nervous on how my feet respond. If we need to stretch out to 5, we got enough food to make it 5.
Yeah, wow. It's just, you've learned something then, haven't you? Your last point in your text was old shoes make for tired and sore feet, and they do. And the worse your shoes are, the worse your feet are going to be. So let's hope that as soon as you get your new ones, it'll be like walking in carpet slippers. You never know. So.
I hope so.
So your husband decided to treat you for your birthday, apparently. What did he do? Did he buy you a new diamond ring, or did he buy you some flowers? What did he get you?
He got what any hiker might like to get. He arranged a slack pack for my birthday.
Sweet old romantic thing.
It's just what I needed.
Yeah, of course.
We arrived at Black Bear Resort the day before my birthday, and when we checked in, he already had looked ahead at the road, the next road crossing, and so he arranged it so that we would get a ride up to Walnut Mountain Road. Walnut Mountain Road, and we hiked back to Black Bear. So that was on September 12th. So we got dropped off at Walnut, and we slack packed back to the hostel. And we had frozen pizza for dinner.
Man, you are a cheap date.
One thing in Black Bear, that's what your choices are. It's either a freeze-dried or a frozen pizza. But no, the slack pack was it was a really nice treat. And I thought it made a very appropriate birthday gift this year.
Quite right too. And funny enough, with your lousy shoes, you got another slapback. So I think that probably helped you as well, I suspect. Tell us about the shuttle driver who gave you one.
Oh, my goodness. So we had been in contact with a shuttle driver as we're approaching Erwin. And Trail Horse had, been talking back and forth with the shuttle driver, and we kind of told him that we would be at the parking lot coming out of the woods between 6 and 7 p.m. So they were kind of in touch of where, what our status was for the day, so the shuttle driver could pick us up. Well, when we still had about 8 miles left to go in the day, this was a push for us too. We did a 21-mile day because we knew that there might be a tropical storm coming in.
All right.
And so we were originally going to do like a 16-mile day, and we pushed it up to 21, which is why he was kind of keeping the shuttle driver up to date. So we had already done 12. We had about 8 to go or whatever, close to 8, 13, maybe it's 13 and 8, whatever.
Yeah, good math.
We come to a road crossing, and Steve with Unicoi Shuttles was there waiting for us. And he offered for us to slack pack the rest of the way to the parking lot that we had originally agreed to meet him at. And so that was such a nice surprise. He already had a little backpack waiting for us.
Nice.
So we threw in our water and, whatever, like a little mini first aid kit. And we put our backpacks in his car.
Oh.
And he also took, there's another backpack that's a little bit ahead of us. And it was so sweet. He even took that other backpacker's backpack into town. So there's 3 of us that got, he was way ahead of us, but there was 3. He slack packed 3 hikers just for the heck of it.
That's real nice. Yeah, it's trail magic when you need it, and with your shoes you certainly need it, and also with that area as well. You go pretty high there, in Rome Mountain area, and you saw the great Hump Mountain, which is one of my favourite mountains of all. What was it like up there for you?
Oh my goodness! Between Hump and Little Hump was beautiful. Because you could see, the gap. You could see, both humps from the gap, and it's all meadow area, so it's nice and open. And the wildflowers through the area are absolutely gorgeous. However, we did have some pretty gusty winds in that area. So as you're walking through the meadow, a lot of the meadows there, a lot of meadow areas have like a little path for you to go through.
Yeah.
Well, the winds were so strong, it was pushing us off the little path.
Wow.
And into the bushes. So it was a breezy, gusty day, but it was clear between the hump and Little Hump. It
Lovely.
was clear, and you had a really good view. And up on Hump, you get nearly a 360-degree view as you're looking around. And it was absolutely a beautiful time to be between those two. Now, just a little down, there's Grassy Ridge, Grassy Ridge Mountain. Unfortunately, that area we were socked in. So I understand there's really good views from those balds, Grassy Ridge balds and Jane bald. Normally, I think there's views in that area, but we were completely socked in when we crossed that area.
The way it goes, take the views when you can, and you took the view when you could.
Yes.
I think that's always an important lesson. But look, since you made your decision to change your hike in some ways, you seemed so much happier. I've got to tell you, listening to you talk and that, you seem to have be very much at peace with it. So I'm really pleased you're enjoying it so much. And he won't remember me, but say hi to Elmer for me and enjoy Hot Springs, and we'll catch up soon, okay?
Okay, I will send your hello to Elmer. And thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And I'm enjoying the heck out of it. Thank you.
All right. Cheers then. Bye.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Cheers.
I'm glad you mentioned the importance of the comments in Far Out. It's a dynamic app that becomes more valuable as people populate it with information. I must admit, I wasn't great at that myself, but I could certainly appreciate it when I was on the trail a few weeks ago. In fact, had we not seen such concerns with the water in the app, we may well have pushed forward and gotten into a bit of trouble. And what an old romantic trail horse turned out to be, eh? A slack pack for his wife on her birthday. Funny what becomes important on a long-distance hike, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sure a diamond would have fitted the bill, but a slack pack has got to be a close second. Before we move on to Emily's book, big thank yous again to our awesome donors. This week, monthly donors were Gail Posey, Todd Withrow, a new one from Galloway Johnson, Suzanne Johnson, Betty McEnany, Michael Garsh, Anne Pickin, Sean Deadwiley, Sharon James and Melanie Swisher, while Lisa Kaplan also sent a nice donation, thanking me for providing a great podcast. Thanks to all of you who step up. If you'd like to reward me with a cup of coffee a week or whatever suits your budget, you can donate at hikingradionetwork.com on any of the donate buttons you find on the show pages. Thank you so much. Finally today, Emily meets a couple of guys who stop every day on the trail at 4 p.m. for cocktails and appetizers. Now, that is living. I'll see you next week. Carl and Walking Man also stopped here, as well as several other hikers. A dozen or so of us managed to find suitable spots for our tents. Maybe not so suitable. We were pitched just inside the woods off the road. The guidebook highly suggests not to camp close to road access. It could be dangerous in some areas where the locals are not too friendly toward the hiking community. We all felt safe with our numbers that night. It was a good place to stop after a double-digit day of hiking, and best of all, there was a small convenience store. I took full advantage of this little hole-in-the-wall establishment. It literally had holes in the walls. I was learning to become a risk-taker, but that day I played it conservatively. I stayed away from the fresh food items. I was afraid anything exposed to the inside of the store might harbour pathogens requiring shots. I preferred the safety of the package choices full of preservatives. I grabbed a soda, a bag of chips and a Snickers bar. That was the treat I craved, the first of such delicacies since being on the trail. I'd given them up for Lent before I started my journey. Lent had ended 3 days earlier with Easter. It may not have been a nutritious dinner for the night, but it was high calories and taste. Later, I even yogied another Snickers from a fellow hiker named Bloomer. Yogiing is when a hiker manages to gain food from others without directly asking for it. After consuming Bloomer's handout, I wished I had not done so. The first bite was hard and dry. I thought it was just a little worn from being stuffed in a food bag. I finished it, but soon after my stomach was not happy I had done so. I later learned it was a candy bar Bloomer had from a previous hike several years ago. I vowed not to break my rule again, the rule of not taking food from another hiker who was not in my close-knit group. The sun was starting to think about disappearing, not quite dusk, but the time you know darkness will follow soon. A few of us were sitting on the ground sharing stories. We were nestled less than 100 yards into the woods. We looked up through the trees and saw a lone hiker walking on the road. We couldn't see the road, but we knew he was on it. He looked like Jesus. The fact that this hiker's trail name was Jesus was even more fitting. We all had a chuckle, but I couldn't help but wonder what Jesus would look like today if he were walking down the street. Would I just watch from afar and make jokes, or would I approach him? Would I even recognise him? I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, wondering if I was doing all I could to be the best person I was meant to be. 4 long days of hiking took me from Hot Springs, North Carolina to Erwin, Tennessee. The second day out, I hiked 18 miles alone. It was hot, buggy and hilly. I was alone, but not alone. There were other hikers at Flint Mountain Shelter who I'd come to know by trail name only, just familiar faces in the woods. Walking Man and Carl were not going to make it this far. My feet hurt. I was tired and beat. The plan for the next day was to take it slower and do fewer miles. So much for taking it easy and letting my feet determine my miles. The next day I hiked alone again. This time did just under 19 miles. It brought me up and over Bald Mountain at an elevation of 5,516 feet. It was a long, cloudy climb up to the Bald. As I approached the summit, the clouds vanished, revealing an unhindered 360-degree view. I'd never seen anything so spectacular. I took a selfie video of myself with the view, and as I did, I broke down and sobbed. Again. At this rate, I wouldn't have a tear left in my body by the time I reached Virginia. I was so grateful to Bruce and the boys for supporting me on my adventure, and to God for giving me the strength to thrive. It wasn't just the view that made it so grand, but a combination of that and all I had gone through to get to that point. Clingman's Dome back in North Carolina had an incredible view, but did not cause an emotional breakdown. Visitors can drive to the top of that attraction. There I was surrounded by tourists, making it less appealing, but to witness the grandeur of Bald Mountain, I had to earn it, and I was there alone to enjoy it by myself. The last 2 days I'd been lonely because I was solo. But God had a bigger plan for me, and hiking by myself was part of the plan. He had a treat waiting for me at the top of that summit. My solitude on top of the board gave me the privacy to break down emotionally and give thanks to him, Bruce, and everyone else who made my trip possible. From the summit, it was a short hop to the shelter, and I seemed to float in on wings. I don't even remember the 1.2-mile hike to my resting spot for the night. What I do recall is arriving at the shelter elated with what I'd seen and felt, and I couldn't wait to share it with the others. I wanted to see what they thought of the board. I was full of joy and openly shared with them as I proclaimed, "Wasn't that marvellous and so spectacular?" There were 4 or 5 other hikers there, and they all looked at me like I had 3 heads and 2 were cut off. "What?" one of them replied. "The board, the view, it was so awesome," I said. They only became more perturbed with my happiness and ignored me after that. Apparently, the summit was sucked in for them, making their moods as damp as the day had been. As far as I know, I was the only hiker in those few days who was blessed with the sight. The next day I would be arriving at Uncle Johnny's cabins 2 days earlier than planned. But first, I had to work off the night's party effects. My shelter mates insisted on indulging in some weed for most of the night. I did not partake in the mind-altering pleasure, but it was so stuffy in the shelter that I could not escape it. I did all I could to keep from breathing it in. I despise smoking of any kind. My mother died young because of lung cancer from smoking cigarettes. I also had many friends growing up who wasted their lives with marijuana. It was too dark and too late for me to set up my tent outside, and I didn't dare speak up. I was the only one not participating, and I didn't want to cause any trouble, so I suffered through it. I had my own excitement on top of the board. The others were creating their own visuals in a different way. The next morning I was sick to my stomach and my throat hurt. It took 3 hours of hiking and breathing in fresh air before I felt better. Most hikers on the trail were considerate and would ask if it bothered anyone. This group didn't care about anyone except themselves. They were there to have a good time, no matter who they bothered. I also had to deal with very cold temps in the morning. It was 38 degrees, but with the wind chill it felt much colder. The only way to warm up was to hike. Just as the morning sickness passed, so did the morning chill, and it turned out to be a very pleasant and enjoyable hike. At No Business Knob Shelter, I had a great lunch. There were 5 high school guys out for the night. They were great kids. One gave me a tangerine, one shared his chocolate-covered raisins, and another went on a water run. The water boy took one of my hydration bags also. I had great trail magic right there. The water boy was taking forever to return. One of the others went to look for him, with no luck. I still needed to do a little over 6 miles, and it was early afternoon, so I packed up and left. The lunch break had already lasted an hour and a half. The remaining kids filled my spare pouch from their supply, and I was off. Just outside of Erwin, I caught up with 2 men. This was very unusual. I never caught up to anyone unless they were injured or aged. Brothers Chris and Todd were neither. They had been section hiking the Appalachian Trail for a few years. Twice a year, they backpacked as far as they could for 1 week. I called up to them just as they were scouting for their 4 p.m. break. They explained to me that their earlier hikes were all about miles and getting it done. Then they realised they were missing the whole point of escaping their lives of work and stress, so they stopped rushing and were now taking it slow and easy. They carried heavy packs with luxury items like camp chairs and comfy mattress pads. They also had a 4 p.m. ritual of stopping and having a cocktail with appetizers. I joined them from a break with my snacks and sport drink as they mixed up their beverage of vodka, schnapps and Gatorade with a snack of salami and cheese. My yogiing skills failed me that day. The descent into Erwin went on and on and on. I stopped counting after the 17th switchback. I remember thinking, enough already, just get me down. I don't need a ramp. I made it to the cabins about 5 p.m. I splurged and rented the private cabin for $30. It was overpriced by about $29.99. It came complete with dirt, a cold shower, no curtains, and a hole in the threshold that was home to the largest black spider I had ever seen. He did not survive long. I should have let him live to eat the mice that visited me the 2 nights I stayed. Uncle Johnny's was known as a party place, and it was loud with all the other hikers staying there. But it was warm, dry, and had a bed. I was not sure it was a clean bed, but it was a bed. The guidebook stated that there was a shuttle to town for dinner. It did not state the time of that shuttle. I arrived too late. I begged and pleaded with the cabin keeper, but he would not bend. I was so hungry. I was now in full hiker hunger mode every day. I had my resupply box and Andrew's. We had dropped them off on our way down to Georgia. I poured through them but didn't want more trail food. I went to the cabin store and bought a Klondike bar, a Snickers and a bag of chips. That did little to fill the caloric cravings of my nutrient-deprived body. I went back to my room sulking. Later, I went to the front of the store where there was a picnic table. I hung around, hoping someone might stop by so I could hitch a ride. No such luck. I noticed a tub of onion dip and a half-eaten bag of chips unattended on the table. I vaguely remember seeing those items there earlier that afternoon. They were still there. They'd been sitting in the sun all afternoon. I looked at the food and wondered how sick I would get if I ate them. I was that hungry. Forgetting the vow I'd made to myself after eating Bloomer's Snickers bar, I consumed all the sun-melted dip and stale chips. They tasted great. I was fine. That night, my paradigm of food safety changed. Despite the cold and sickly start to my day and the lack of cleanliness and hospitality at the cabins ending the day, the middle of the day was fabulous. The weather was nice, and meeting the 2 groups of section hikers taught me a lesson about remembering to enjoy it out there. I almost envied them. They had no real schedule. They were not controlled by hammering out the miles and getting to the next destination. For them, it was all about the moment. I was beginning to despise long-distance backpacking. I was in no hurry to go back out the next day. Carl and his dad would arrive and I was up for a 0. I still needed to resupply. I had my food box, but I was in need of fresh food. It also gave me a chance to do another pack shakedown. I shipped a few items home. I no longer needed my hat, a pair of gloves I had found, my liner, an extra bandana, my GoPro and batteries, camp fork and headlamp. Carl had found a better headlamp and gave it to me since mine of 90 lumens was not bright enough. I also retired my jet boil. I'd quit cooking a while back. On the 0 day, I was able to catch the shuttle to town for breakfast with a few other hikers. We were dropped off at a local diner and given our pickup time. I was tickled pink when I read the menu's heading, any meal, any time of day. My breakfast crew was astonished when I ordered a cheeseburger, fries and strawberry milkshake. What? Was my reaction to them. I'm hungry. I resupplied later in the day when the cabin keeper dropped me off at the store on his lunch shuttle run. He said he would be back in about an hour or so when he retrieved the lunch crew. My resupply was quick, so I decided I would try my luck at hitchhiking. I'd never, ever hitchhiked before. That was way out of my comfort zone, even though I grew up in a small town where all the local kids did so. Erwin was supposed to be a hiker-friendly town, so I decided to give it a try. It was Sunday, and the route back to the cabin was lined with churches. I was feeling lucky. I passed several houses of worship as godly people were leaving. Not one person so much as gave me a wave. I was clean, smiling, and carrying a few grocery bags. I was sure someone would see my desperation and offer me a ride. I was less than a half mile from the cabin when a car finally pulled over. I opened the back door and there was a hiker friend already in the back seat. The only reason the driver pulled over was because of my friend. Glad I did not place any bets. Even though I'd felt lucky, there was no luck in the cards for me that day, unless it was the fact that I had not been run over. Carl and Walking Man made it to Uncle Johnny's, along with several other hiker friends. We all spent the day hanging out, repacking and socialising in the backyard. If you saw the documentary Walking Home by Ryan Layton, you will recognise this scene. It was a nice time of hiker camaraderie and storytelling. Most of us had been on the trail for a month or so, and we all shared the same highs and lows in one way or another. After a great day in the backyard, we took the supper shuttle to a Mexican grill. 8 of us shared a table, and the trail bonding continued over beers and very large margaritas. When the oversized platters of tacos, burritos, fajitas, and more came, mine was mixed up with Wookie's. He had already started eating it before we noticed. The waiter was apologetic, offering to make me a new one. I reassured him it was no big deal. I figured if I didn't get sick from the chips and dip, I would be fine from Wookie's double dipping his fork into my dinner. After all, we were all becoming one big, happy hiker family. A trip across the parking lot to Walmart was next. Some of the hikers took the shuttle over. Carl, Walking Man and I walked. We more like stumbled over. Their gigantic beers and my one margarita bowl had us a little tipsy. Walking Man and I stumbled on the sidewalk. We had hiked roughly 350 miles over hills and through woods without any major mishaps, only to almost be done in by a curb. Or maybe it was the hops and tequila.